the known life, the transient, I told you about trans, is to form and decide identity for the unknown life, the permanent. In other words, you are here, but not for long. You swing at the park, but not for long. What do you do with the time that you have? I think this is Whitman's challenge, his theodicy. His challenge is always going to be, use the time that you have well. Now to finish, if all came but to ashes of dung, if maggots and rats ended us, then alarum. You'll remember this word from Woundresser. For we are betrayed, then indeed suspicion of death. In other words, if all there is this thing right here now, this thing we're calling our life, and there's nothing else, there's no significance, there's no meaning, then he calls it alarm. And then he'll ask some interesting rhetorical questions. Do you suspect death? If I were to suspect death, I should die now. In other words, I got to have some hope. Do you think I could walk pleasantly and well suited toward annihilation? Go back to Song of Myself, passage 6. And his argument, of course, is that we're fundamentally energy. And energy is that which can be neither created nor destroyed, which means there is no death. So why do we fear it so much? Why do we fear annihilation? This will be his argument. Pleasantly and well suited, I walk. There's this word picture, of course, from Song of the Open Road. Whither I walk, I cannot define, but I know it is good. You'll remember this from Song of Myself 18. Good to fall, he will say it, right? This use of the word good takes us obviously back to Genesis, and the Lord saw it was good. Again, it's going to be repeated now. The whole universe indicates that it is good. The past and the present indicate that it is good. This is his theodicy. That is to say, why must there be pain? Why must there be bad? In the end, all suffering, for Whitman, is defined as somehow propedeutic, useful, right? That is to say good. How beautiful and perfect are the animals. And now we're going to get a series of kind of proclamations that will culminate with a whole bunch of these exclamation points. Obviously, Song of Myself 32 comes to mind here with the animals. How perfect the earth, and the minutest thing upon it. Think about Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, 1798, Coleridge's offering, and the power of that. What is called good is perfect, and what is called bad is just as perfect. Again, this balance, this antipodes. Hey, do you remember starting from Pomenog 7, I make the poem of evil also? Do you remember that? How he says that? He's coming back to that idea. The vegetables and minerals are all perfect, and the imponderable fluids perfect. Slowly and surely they have passed on to this, and slowly and surely they yet pass on. This idea of passing on, this idea of transmuting, this idea of moving beyond, the evolutionary model. And then he finishes passage 9 with the I swear, which again is 24 times used in Leaves of Grass. We're going to get it twice here. I swear, I think now that everything without exception has an eternal soul. It's a compelling idea. Everything without exception has an eternal soul, because everything's energy and it all goes on. The trees have, rooted in the ground. We go back to, of course, Song of the Open Road and his suggestion that sometimes when you walk under the right kind of tree, it's stunning. It blows your mind. The way it's, of course, he says, being around certain people. The weeds of the sea have. Now, of course, the weeds of the sea is wonderful, right? Because think about Leaves of Grass and the idea of weeds of the sea. And we've seen this, the weeds at the bottom of the sea. The animals, everything for him has this eternal energy, this eternal soul. And then he says it again. I swear, I think there is nothing but immortality. That the exquisite scheme, earlier it was patterns, now it's scheme. The exquisite scheme, 13 times in Leaves of Grass the word exquisite gets used. Whitman loved this word. And the nebulous float is for it. By the way, here coming in whispers, thy mother with equal brood 6 will use this nebulous again. Float is for it. And the cohering is for it. This cohering, you'll remember from The Sleeper 7. And all preparation is for it. And identity is for it. Immortality, that is to say. And life and materials are all together for it. Well, this is compelling poetry. It will awaken in us all kinds of questions. And yet the fundamental idea here, I think at 2A, is that life is always cyclical, guys. There is nothing, he says, but immortality. Again, why? Because we're energy. And as we teach all third graders, energy is that which can be neither created nor destroyed. And as We studied when we read our Plato's Republic, especially Book 7 of Republic. Why do we fear death if there is no death? There is only transformation. Of course, we can think as well of Plato's Phaedo and the way in which Socrates will try and make this argument for the immortality of the soul. At 2b, well, I love passage 4 and the rhythm, the wordplay, as I said, clippity-clop language, which is almost like the clippity-clop of ponies as we're playing that game of the burial scene. It's quite a remarkable one. At 3a, there's so many places that we could go. I mean, just think of James Joyce's I was going to say Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, but I'll as well point out Ulysses. You remember when Bloom goes to that funeral? I think that there's some of that hidden away in this as well. There's just so many ways to kind of play this game. Think about the power of time as it relates to important modernist poets. I have said that T.S. Eliot can't really be read without an appreciation of Whitman. And I realize there are a lot of Eliot scholars that want to take umbrage with what I say, and a lot of Whitman scholars as well. But just hear those opening lines of Burt Norton. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been is an abstraction, remaining a perpetual possibility only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. I think to just, I mean, we've given full exegesis of all of the lines of four quartets, beginning with Burt Norton and ending with Little Gidding, and I think it makes sense to pick up Leaves of Grass, read it all, and then pick up four quartets and just see the ways in which one American poet is going to influence another American / British poet in T.S. Eliot. Finally, at 3b, well, what do you take from this kind of language? Do you take hope from this idea of immortality? Does it work for you? Because in the end, guys, all I'm doing is just presenting you with ideas from Leaves of Grass. You get to decide whether these ideas for you make sense or not. Is there some comfort that you take from the idea of the patterns that you are beginning to see? Certainly, Leaves of Grass is going to play out that argument for you. Well, guys, now we have come to, some will argue now, the real end of Leaves of Grass, the final 148 poems, which are really a way to witness Whitman's learning to live with his theodicy as he begins to grow old, as he begins to age, into his 60s, finally towards his 70s. Things started breaking down in his life, physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, ontologically, and he had to come to terms with all of that, and he did that for us. He provides us evidence of it through his poems. It's going to be interesting. Now we will move on to the 18 poems of Whispers of Heavenly Death. And in some ways, we've been really prepared for that set of poems by virtue of our study of To Think of Time, and obviously the poems that came before. I hope these readings are challenging you to think about your own preparations for your life and obviously your death. Thank you.